Those who used the Nine Rings became mighty in their day, kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. They obtained glory and great wealth, yet it turned to their undoing. They had, as it seemed, unending life, yet life became unendurable to them. They could walk, if they would, unseen by all eyes in this world beneath the sun, and they could see things in worlds invisible to mortal men. But too often they beheld only the phantoms and delusions of Sauron. And one by one, sooner or later, according to their native strength and to the good or evil of their wills in the beginning, they fell under the thraldom of the ring that they bore, and under the domination of the one which was Sauron's. And they became forever invisible save to him that wore the ruling ring. And they entered into the realm of shadows. The Nazgûl were they, the Ringwraiths, the enemy's most terrible servants. Darkness went with them, and they cried with the voices of death. Greetings friends, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today I have a video that many of you requested in our last poll. We will be speaking about the Nazgûl, their origins, abilities, history, and downfall. I'll also go ahead and link some related videos in the description below and cards above, so please check those out as well. Without further delay, let's begin our tale. The Nazgûl first appeared in Middle-earth in 2251 of the Second Age, after they had been given 9 of the rings forged by the Elves of Eregion under the tutelage of Sauron as Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. Of the 9 men, we know little in terms of specifics. We are told that 3 of the 9 were great lords of Númenor. Since the Witch King was the most powerful of the 9, I would imagine that he was one of these 3. Tolkien himself speculates this in notes for his translators, according to the Lord of the Rings: A Reader's Companion. Besides the Númenorians, we know that Khamûl, who was second in command to the Witch King, was an Easterling. The rest were probably middlemen from the kingdoms of men in Middle-earth during the Second Age, some likely coming from the lands south and east of Mordor. Some even speculate that Gothmog, who was second in command to the Witch King during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, was also one of the Nazgûl in the books. Now their 9 rings gave them power amongst their people. They became kings and sorcerers, and their lifespans were elongated until eventually they fell to the power of the One Ring and Sauron, and then they became wraiths. It is possible that they continued to hold on to their rings until their collective demise, and their rings were bound to their spirits. Or, as Tolkien mentions in his letters and the Unfinished Tales, it is likely that Sauron himself held on to their rings. Honestly, before making this video, I always thought that the Nazgûl wore their rings and the rings were bound to their spirits, just as I believe Sauron wore his ring during the downfall of Númenor and carried the ring back to Mordor with his spirit. But seeing that the Nazgûl always returned to Mordor and their master Sauron after losing their physical embodiments, it makes more sense that he would also carry their rings. But there is an argument to be made that the 9 would need their rings to continuously survive. Anyway, the 9 men would fade, and they would become Sauron's greatest servants. They would be called Nazgûl, meaning Ringwraiths in Black speech, the Black Riders, the 9, the Fallen Kings, the Black Wings, and Uleri, possibly meaning those who are in/of unnatural shadow in Quenya, as suggested by the Tolkien scholar Michael Martinez. They were immortal servants of Sauron, surviving only as long as their master did, with one possible exception. In the tail end of the Angmar War, Glorfindel would state that it would not be by the hands of man that the Witch King would fall. And indeed, he met his end by the hands of Merry the Hobbit and Éowyn the Shield Maiden. Now whether he and his spirit completely perished indeed is up for debate, due to the curse of the Nazgûl and some interesting lines in The Return of the King. It's possible that Merry's Westerness weapon undid the spell of immortality for the Witch King, allowing Éowyn to truly kill him, or perhaps it only ended his temporary physical form. I'll link a discussion about this in the description. In terms of appearance, the Nazgûl wore black robes and carried steel swords and Morgul blades. One who wore the One Ring or could otherwise see into the Wraith world would see pale figures with crowns and haggard hands. The exception to this is when the Witch King wore his hood down during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, revealing a crown and red fires. The Nazgûl could not see under daylight as others could, and so they smelled the blood of living beings and could feel the presence of others. Finally, before we move on to their history, the Nazgûl practiced Morgul, meaning black sorcery or black arts in Sindarin. They carried Morgul steel, which had the power to make one wounded with such potency to turn the victim into a wraith themselves. And with them came the Black Breath, a poisonous air upon their breath that could render some unconscious, sick, or worse. We also find that the Witch King had some power in necromancy, as depicted in the Angmar War with the Barrow-wights and the Barrow Downs of Cardolan. The Witch King's dark magic also helped to break the gates of Minas Tirith during the Siege of Minas Tirith. It seems that the Witch King also had some power in fire, for he was able to light his sword aflame during that battle. With all of that said, let's discuss the history of the Nazgûl. Besides first being seen in Middle-earth in 2251 of the Second Age, and probably participating in the War of the Last Alliance, the Nazgûl did not partake in many deeds during the Second Age. In 1300 of the Third Age, the Nazgûl reappeared in Middle-earth. The chief of the Ringwraiths formed the realm of Angmar, and he would eventually become known as the Witch King of Angmar. He would make war upon the kingdom of Arnor in the Angmar War, and after the realm split into three, he would have victory over Rudar, Cardolin, and then Arthedain, in that order, before eventually being defeated and forced to leave the north in 1975 of the Third Age, by the combined forces of the Elves, Men of Gondor, and some others. At the end of the Battle of Fornost, the Witch King would make a great enemy in Eärnur, the last king of Gondor before Aragorn, and Glorfindel would tell of the Witch King's final fate. I go into more detail about this war in my Angmar War and Witch King epic character history videos. The Witch King would flee to Mordor and gather the other Nazgûl to him. In the year 2000 of the Third Age, the Nazgûl would assemble and besiege Minas Ithil for 2 years before capturing it and turning it into Minas Morgul. The Nazgûl would take the Ithil stone for Sauron during this conquest, and it is within Minas Morgul the Nazgûl would stay until the re-emergence of Sauron in Mordor. In 2050 of the Third Age, Eärnur, the last king, would accept one of the Witch King's many challenges for a duel within Minas Morgul, and he would ride forth, never to be seen again, leaving his crown upon the lap of his father Eärnil II until the return of the king. The Nazgûl would remain in Minas Morgul until after Sauron was ousted from Dol Guldur by the White Council. The Dark Lord openly declared himself in Mordor in 2951 of the Third Age, and he sent 3 of the Nazgûl to garrison Dol Guldur, one of them being Khamûl, who commanded the fortress. In 3017 of the Third Age, Gollum would reveal the name Baggins and the Shire, and the 9 Nazgûl would be sent forth by Sauron to recover the One Ring from the hobbit who carried it. They would go forth, coming to Isengard to speak with Saruman about the ring. The wizard would lie about having knowledge of the Shire, but he would tell them that Gandalf likely knew where the ring was. They then went north upon fell black steeds, likely stolen from Rohan and perverted afterwards. They would scatter the rangers at Sarn Ford and enter the Shire. The Nazgûl traveled far while looking for the hobbits, to places such as Frodo's home in Crickhollow and Buckland, where Fatty Bolger would elude them, and they would ride forth out of Buckland after the horn call of Buckland was sounded. They would also speak to Gaffer Gamgee and Farmer Maggot, looking for the hobbits, and some of the Black Riders would go to Weathertop early and fight with Gandalf. Frodo and his companions were nearly caught in the bounds of the Shire and in Bree, but with the help of the elves and Aragorn they stayed safe. But the Nazgûl eventually caught up with the hobbits at their camp near Weathertop, and they were driven off by Aragorn after Frodo was stabbed by the Witch King, who the hobbit himself had damaged after invoking the name Elbereth and slashing at him. Upon the last bridge, 3 Black Riders were driven off by Glorfindel as they guarded it against Aragorn and the hobbits. Finally, they pursued Frodo as the hobbit rode upon Asfaloth over the ford of Brunine. They would then be washed away by the waters of the river through the powers of Elrond and Gandalf. 8 of the 9 riders would be found after this event, but what happened to the 9th rider is unknown. Perhaps he too was washed away, or retreated from the north, or even spied upon the Fellowship for a time, I'm unsure. Or mayhaps he was uncloaked and was forced to retreat to Mordor. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. What happened to that 9th rider that is unaccounted for in the Fellowship of the Ring? Perhaps I'm just missing something. The Lord of the Rings Online does something very cool with this subplot. Anyway, during the Council of Elrond, Glóin speaks of a rider from Mordor that came to Erebor asking for information about Bilbo. He may have been one of the 9, but I believe it was someone else like the Mouth of Sauron or a different Black Númenorian. The Fellowship would be created, and it would consist of 9 walkers against 9 riders, and the next Nazgûl we see would be shot down by Legolas over the great river Anduin as he flew upon a fell beast. There was also a Nazgûl with fell wings awaiting the delivery of Merry and Pippin after their capture, but the Uruk-hai forewent him. After this, the Nazgûl would be seen more upon such fell steeds, and one would fly over the dead marshes while Frodo, Sam, and Gollum traversed them. Another Nazgûl would be seen flying towards Isengard after Pippin gazed into the Orthanc Stone, as he likely went to see if Saruman was withholding information from Sauron. This is, at least, what Gandalf had told Pippin on their journey to Minas Tirith. The Nazgûl would also feel uneasy about spies upon the stairs of Cirith Ungol, and they would send word to the orcs to have the passage watched more closely, according to what Sam overhears. After this, the Nazgûl would be needed more as warriors in the War of the Ring, for Sauron would send them against the men of Osgiliath as they rode back towards Minas Tirith, and Gandalf would defy the Nazgûl with his power. The Nazgûl would then fight in the Siege of Minas Tirith and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. The Witch King would command Sauron's forces and break the gate of the city, coming face to face with Gandalf before the Ride of the Rohirrim. Then he would topple Snowmane and Theoden King before being slain himself by Éowyn and Merry. The black breath of the Nazgûl would infect Merry, Éowyn, and possibly some others, and Aragorn would heal them with Ethelas. Finally, the 8 remaining Nazgûl would fight in the Battle of the Black Gate, and after Frodo put the One Ring upon his finger, the Nazgûl would be ordered to go to Mount Doom, but they would be too late to save the One Ring. The ring that truly bound their fates would be destroyed where it was made thousands of years before, and the Nazgûl would meet their ends in the fires of Ora Turuin. The book Sauron Defeated has notes that speak to alternative endings that Tolkien had thought about doing involving the Nazgûl and an even returned or never killed Witch King called the Wizard King, which I find interesting, but I'm happy about how the Nazgûl met their ends, with the same fires that forged the ring that ruled over their rings. And in this fire ends our tale about the Nazgûl. From the Ringwraiths of Tolkien's works, we may see what the false promises of glory and power may bring, or even what immortality may bring. We must not take the corrupting way to success, for that may put us in the servitude of those with immoral or evil prospects. As such, it happened to the Nazgûl. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this new episode of The Beings of Middle-earth. If you did, please hit that like button and share this with a friend. It really helps the channel. For more information on the Nazgûl, please check out The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, and Unfinished Tales. I'll also link the Nazgûl Wikipedia and Tolkien Gateway articles that helped in the research of today's video in the description. What are your thoughts on the Nazgûl? I really like these evil creatures, as they are a constant reminder of the threat of Sauron throughout the Legendarium, and they themselves are intimidating and evil foes with interesting backstories. Let me know your thoughts, questions, corrections, and additions in the comments below, and please check out our music channel, Facebook, Twitter, merch, and Patreon for our podcasts and Discord server in the description. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today, and I'll see you all again next week with a region spotlight on Erebor, the Lonely Mountain. As always, everyone, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my great friends.